Well, how hungry will Miles the Monster be this weekend? Let's get ready for Dover next on Racin-n-Braisin. Well, hi folks, welcome back to Racin-n-Braisin. I am CJ, a lifelong NASCAR fan and chef, bringing you plenty of news and analysis from each race weekend, as well as a couple of tips and tricks from my kitchen to yours. Today, we're going to catch up on news of the week and then dive into the schedule and notes for Dover, and finally round things off with what I am looking for. So let's go ahead and get caught up with the news of the week. First and foremost, and I think this is a big one for sure, we are still waiting to hear the decision from the District Court of Appeals regarding the injunction that 2311 and Front Row Motorsports have filed to keep their charters while the season continues and they continue their lawsuit against NASCAR. We are expecting a response either later today on Thursday or at some point on Friday. And then depending on the ruling, that could mean that both of those teams, with all 6 charters combined, could be without that charter starting this weekend. What that does for the race teams is mean that they're going to lose a certain chunk of purse money from each race, as well as their guarantee to qualify for each race if there's a field larger than 40 cars. Through the rest of the season right now, it doesn't look like that's going to be an issue as far as the qualifying part, but definitely an issue as far as the purse money for the teams go. Now, there has been some speculation throughout the week in social media land that NASCAR was going to just go ahead and sell off those charters immediately to other teams, kind of, put the screws to the 2 teams that have this lawsuit against them. But NASCAR has come out with a pretty strong statement saying that they are not going to do anything with the charters until this lawsuit is completed sometime in December or January. So the charters for those teams are safe for now. They're not being sold off yet. But depending on how things go with the lawsuit, they could be losing their charters and could be losing their top stars as well. Next up, just announced here today through Racer, the deal to have San Diego on the 2026 schedule is now expected to be announced as early as next week. Still no details as far as where in San Diego that race is going to occur or what that course is going to look like, but the announcement is absolutely expected now next week. So this long rumored deal that we've been hearing is finally getting some teeth to it. Now, there are still some questions about whether Mexico City returns next year and whether the Chicago street course returns next year. Haven't really heard much more about Mexico City specifically, but I have heard that Chicago is working really hard to get the street course back on the schedule and secure another deal. The only hang-up is a difference in when they can do the dates on the schedule. Both sides there not in agreement as to when a good date for that would be. NASCAR has said through social media this week that the Chicagoland Raceway out there in Joliet has taken a higher jump on the list of hitting that Chicago market for next season. And then finally on the news this week, and this one isn't really necessarily news per se, but it is the rumor mill getting sparked up about silly season. The pot was stirred up quite a bit this week when I believe it was Kevin Harvick on the Happy Hour podcast said that he thinks that there are going to be some big dominoes that are going to fall this offseason, and kind of hinted at Kyle Busch leaving RCR and Daniel Suarez possibly being plugged right on into that program in the 8 car. That would be a huge silly season move right there. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below, guys. I thought Busch signed for an additional year. Is this year the additional year, or is it next year? I don't remember. Let me know if you guys do or not. All right, well, that will round things out for our news. We'll keep that nice and brief for this week. Let's go ahead and jump into what the schedule looks like for NASCAR action in Dover this weekend. ARCA Series, like I said, will be participating along with the big guys. They're going to have a race on FS1 Friday night. That's going to be at 5 o'clock. On Saturday, things are going to kick off with Xfinity practice at 11, followed by their qualifying. And then, of course, Cup practice and qualifying will be at 1:30 on True TV and Max. The Xfinity race is going to be at 4:30 on Saturday on CW. And then finally, the Cup race will be Sunday at 2 o'clock, 400 miles from Dover. Now, the weather this weekend is going to be kind of iffy, mostly cloudy on Saturday, ambient temperature of 84, but real feel of 95 to 97. So very humid, very warm to be expected for the area at this time of year for sure. And then Sunday, unfortunately, high probability, 88% probability of showers and thunderstorms rolling through the area. Sunday's temperature expected to be even hotter, 88 degrees ambient, with a real feel of 97 or more. So going to be hot, going to be humid, and possibly going to be a rain out event on Sunday. We'll keep an eye on it as the weekend goes along. Now, notes to keep in mind as we start thinking about who to watch for this weekend. Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs Racing have combined to win 14 of the last 19 Dover races. Hendrick getting 8 of those, Gibbs getting 6 of those. So obviously they're going to be the teams to watch this weekend. Only 3 of the last 8 Dover races have had a green flag run of 62 laps or less. And of those 8 races, none of them have finished in overtime. So to be expected, Dover's going to have a lot of long green flag runs to it. This car in particular does not handle concrete very well, and if it gets as hot as expected, it's going to be very slick, and those cars are going to be a handful. I don't expect to see a lot of passing this weekend, I know. And then final note, this weekend, Joey Logano is going to make his 600th career Cup start. Sliced Bread here is the youngest driver to make his 600th start in the Cup Series. I wouldn't worry too much about him this weekend. The last driver to win on their 600th was Richard Petty back in 1973. So don't expect too much as far as stats go for Jolo to be an influence this weekend. So that leads me to get my list together of who I'm going to be watching. Obviously, all 8 cars out of the 2 Hendrick and Gibbs camps we're going to be keeping an eye on. In particular, I am going to be looking at Kyle Larson to see if that team can turn things around. I saw a stat earlier that since the Indy 500, they have had an average finish position 10 spots worse than what they were doing before the Indy 500, which was 12 races before that. So a bit of a slide for that 5 team. As far as those 2 groups, their win leaders there, Chase Elliott has 2 wins here at Dover, and Denny Hamlin has 2 wins as well. So they're definitely going to be favorites on my list for this weekend. I'll also be looking for Chris Buescher and Ryan Preece in the RFK bunch. They've been performing very well this year, and I think this track sets up very well for Buescher and Preece. I'll also be keeping an eye on the 2311 group, in particular Tyler Reddick. I think he does really well at this track from his stats. And then finally, the last group that I'll be keeping an eye on will be from Legacy Motor Club. John Hunter and Eric Jones have looked great this year, really turning things around. I think that group as a whole are coming together with the adjustments that they've made. So that's who I am going to be looking for this weekend. We'll narrow that list down after practice and qualifying. I'll get a recap video and an analysis of how practice and qualifying went for you together on Saturday. Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss that next episode. Now, I do have kind of a weird work schedule this weekend, so I'm not actually going to be able to watch any of this action this weekend live. I'll be catching replays of it all weekend long, but you will not miss anything from me, I promise you on that. And because of that weird work schedule, I don't think I'm actually going to do anything special for the race weekend. Now, the Mid-Atlantic is home for me. As I mentioned on my last video, I'm from Maryland, and crab cakes are one of my favorite things to make when I'm thinking about food from Maryland. But, the crab prices around here in the western North Carolina region just aren't reasonable enough for me to pull the trigger on doing something like that this weekend. So no cooking topic this weekend, but I'll be sure to get something together for you next weekend when they head to Indianapolis. I know my schedule already, and it looks like I'll have some free time on Sunday for you. Until then, guys, I will catch up with you on Saturday. I hope you all are having a great week. Stay happy.